Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of React Roundup. I am your host today, Paige Niederinghaus, and I am joined by our group of panelists, TJ Van Tol.
Hey, everybody.
And Jack Harrington.
Hello.
And our special guest today is Ian Lavery. Welcome, Ian.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Paige.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you on the show this week. So it would be great if you could introduce yourself to our audience, tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do and why you're famous.
Sure. So I don't know if I'm famous yet. I'm working on it. So I'm just a big geek and also a musician. I went to school here at University of British Columbia in Vancouver for music and computer science. Did a double major, so I'm just kind of like couldn't really choose. And yeah, I'm in a couple bands here in town and also just write a whack load of code for a new startup called Pico Voice in town.
Cool.
This episode is sponsored by Sentry. Sentry is the thing that I put into all of my apps. First, I figure out how to deploy them. I get them up on the web. Then I run Sentry on them. And the reason why is because I need to know what's going on in my app all the time. Yeah, I'm kind of a control freak. What can I say? The other reason is that sometimes I miss stuff or I run things in development. You know, it works on my machine. We've all been there, right? And then it gets up in the cloud or up on a server and stuff happens and stuff breaks, right? I didn't configure it right. I'm an idiot and I didn't put the AWS credential in. I didn't do that last week, right? That wasn't me. Anyway, I need that error reported back. Hey, Chuck, I can't connect to AWS. The other thing is that this is something that my users often won't give me information on, and that's, hey, it's too slow. It's not performing right. And I need to know it's slowing down because I don't want them going off to Twitter when they're supposed to be using my app. And so they need to tell me it's not fast enough, and Sentry does that, right? I put Sentry in, it gives me all the performance data, and I can go, hey, that takes 3 seconds to load, that's way too long, and I can go in and I can fix those issues, and then I'm not losing users to Twitter. So, if you have an app that's running slow, if you have an app that's having errors, or if you just have an app that you're getting started with and you want to make sure that it's running properly all the time, then go check it out. They support all major languages and frameworks. They recently added support for Next.js, which is cool. Visit sentry.io/signup and use promo code REACTRoundup. That's all one word, React Roundup, for 3 free months of their base team plan.
So could you tell us a little bit about what Pico Voice does?
Yeah, so Pico Voice is kind of an interesting startup because they decided to really take on like what people expect from voice recognition. Because right now we're pretty much set on cloud. Everything is sent over the internet. Everything is sent to our big tech overlords to divine what the meaning of the speech is, and that's really cool. And it's gotten us pretty far. But the CEO of the company and the main lead chief engineer, Alireza Kanasrian-Hari, he said, you know what? I think I can do this super small. I think I can do it on device. I don't think the speech ever needs to leave the device. And that was basically a very punk move to just say, no, you guys are doing it wrong. And yeah, so he came up with, in 2018, one of the first offline natural language programs. And we've been working really hard to expand support on as many platforms, as many SDKs as possible so that people can have access to this speech recognition on device.
So this blows my mind a little bit because my naive knowing nothing about voice recognition other than like I've used Alexa and Siri a few times, but my developer brain thinks speech recognition and natural language processing, that stuff is hard. I don't think that's like, there's a reason that's not in like developer 101 material. So in my head, it's like, oh, I'm imagining some fancy, like some super complex algorithm and super heavy, intense processing. And like Apple's got like PhDs working on this on some super complex algorithm. So doing this locally kind of blows my mind a little bit. Is it like a lot of code, a lot of processing that happens locally? Like how intensive is this? Do you have to be concerned about like the device's processing power at all? Does that come into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, great question and great concern. Here's the thing. We basically decided, instead of teaching it the entirety of a language and getting it to understand all that is known about a language, we just teach it a few words or a few phrases. So it's kind of a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down. And that allows it to be super small and super power efficient. It uses modern machine learning techniques and lots of optimization. I mean, these things fit on STM32 boards. Like the wake word engine can run under 200 kilobytes of RAM. It's very small, very power efficient. Yeah.
And so
it's more like command speech. Oh, sorry. Let me try that again. So is this more like command speech, or is this free form speech then?
Yeah. So we offer like a bunch of different products. So there's a wake word engine, which is obviously like keyword detection. Like you say react roundup and your device responds, hey, I heard it. Or we have our natural language unit, which basically we call it our speech to intent unit. And it will basically understand something like, I want a large coffee. And it will just, what the algorithm will return is large coffee. I get it. You want a large coffie.
Right. With an intention to want that.
Yes. Right. Now, if you try and ask your coffee maker to tell you a joke, it'll probably be like, what do you want from me? I'm here to make coffee. So
I don't do jokes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's part of the bottom up approach is it's like, you know what, let's prune all the edges and just be like, let's make it context specific. And again, that allows it to be really small. Now we also have our third major product is a full speech to text engine, which that is it definitely is a larger problem and a larger solution, but it's still highly efficient and still very small, still very power efficient because I don't know, my boss is a genius. That's all I can say.
So how do you approach some of the concerns that people have with the big giant tech companies who are doing language recognition and speech software right now, kind of like the privacy and concerns? Because we all know that our Alexas are listening all the time. Our phones are listening for us all the time. How do you approach that kind of thing?
As a developer, as a like...
Well, as a company that's making this kind of software, but saying, let's not put it all in the cloud for data mining purposes.
Right. Well, so we approach it carefully because we know it's very important to people. But the main thing is to make sure audio stays on device. And that was our big sort of goal is like, we just want to, that's the main thing that needs to change because like we've all heard the stories of like Alexa sending like a weird, like a snippet of conversation to your mom or something. Like it does some weird stuff. And it is always listening, and it is wake word gated. A lot of these things don't open up until they're asked to, but wake word engines aren't perfect. And when it false detects, it opens the gate, and then anything it hears from then on it will fire up to the servers and it will try to understand what you're trying to say. And we just thought, okay, well, that's not that big a deal if it's on device, if it's like sheltered, because then at very least we can say your data is not leaving your device. So we can say with certainty that we're not collecting it. We're not indexing it. So I think it gives people the privacy concerns that people are having these days with speech recognition are very much alleviated once they hear, oh, my audio is like never going to leave the device. Like it's never going to record my conversations. Really paranoid people will think like, oh, so that FBI won't be able to tap into my device and just stream my audio and listen to me. So I think that's just kind of our goalpost with all this. And that's the way we try and communicate it to people is just like, privacy and security are like definitely a value proposition with our stuff, in addition to just the performance and the efficiency.
So I have one question to sort of take a step back for a minute. A lot of the tech, like storing audio on device and wake words and such, makes me think, is your tech primarily focused on native mobile apps at the moment? And do you work with the web at all, or what does that story look like?
Yeah, well, so we kind of took a page out of a few kind of inspirational companies like Auth0 and a bunch of other companies that did some really smart dev-focused development. And basically what they did is we're just going to be available everywhere. And that means that you take your core tech and you write it in like C99 even, to keep it like so supported it's ridiculous. And then you just cover it with whatever SDK wrapper you want. So right now we are supported on a bunch of embedded platforms, all desktop platforms, almost all major web frameworks. So it can run on device, on browser. In addition to mobile, what else do we have? We have Go. We just did a Go SDK. I mean, yeah, we're just saying like we're available everywhere. Don't worry about it. Unless you're like somebody who's like, can I get you for Haskell or like something weird? And then it's like, sorry.
I imagine there has to be some bits that are specific to platforms. Like I think the one that like the wake words, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like is that leveraging a specific like iOS or Android API? Like, because I didn't even know like third-party apps could even honestly do that.
Nope, it's a wake word engine that the core is in C, and we just pass it audio, and it tells us when it hears a wake word. So
okay,
there's like the only thing that's platform specific is audio. Really, it's like an often pain point when I do a new SDK is figuring out how to get audio on every platform the framework runs on, because
like codecs and such, or
and just like how does the platform do it? Because some platforms, like actually mobile platforms, are pretty good. You've always got like a media recorder or something that's just like, hey, I do audio. But then when you get to like cross-platform, like desktop support, it's like kind of can be kind of a mess, because nobody really has cross-platform desktop audio that works. Half the time it's like I fire it up and it's just like giving me like crazy garbage back.
So from the React perspective, do we have React native bindings and React web bindings, both?
Yes, both.
Oh, awesome.
Both are supported. Yeah.
Can
So
you walk
I
us
did
through
the
that?
React native, and my colleague David Bartle did the React. Yeah. So sorry, did you say what was your question?
Can you walk us through that then? What does that look like? Is it a hook? How do I integrate this into my React app?
Yeah. So again, we're like super focused on dev experience. So the SDK is a NPM. It's delivered through NPM. It's just literally NPM install app Pico Voice, and then whatever product you're looking for. And then what you get is basically something that we have a JavaScript or a TypeScript interface that you can just call up. You create your instance of your speech recognition engine, your speech to intent engine, whatever you're looking for. And then we always offered like 2 levels of API. So one is basically, hey, you know what? Don't worry about audio. We got you. Like we will do cross-platform audio for you, because the average developer will just want, hey, I just want it to do voice recognition. So I just want to press start and then stop.
Right.
And that's literally the high-level API. Start, stop. Low-level API is just like, hey, you know what? You've probably got your own audio. Maybe you've got a very complex audio pipeline. So we're not going to mess with that. Just give us frames of audio whenever they come to, whenever you're ready to hand them off to the speech recognition engine. And that will literally just take like raw audio frames and then give you results from those. So we just
and then you get like a callback or something when there's certain words, or that when you get that wake word and then you get a phrase, you get some callback saying, oh, this is what was said, that kind of thing.
That's right. So yeah, and with Porcupine, you'll just get like, hey, I heard it, because there's not really much to say other than I heard the wake word. And then with speech to intent, you basically get like a map, like a dictionary containing intents and values, like what size, large, what drink, coffee, that kind of thing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is there an API key then? How do you pay for this, or is it a pay for thing?
Very good question. So we basically currently the model is we have something called the Pico Voice console, where you go and you You can create your speech to intent model, like design your intent, or you can make a custom wake word. And then basically once you have those, that's what you actually put on device. Now, in terms of like payment, the actual model is per platform, per model, basically, because you're basically buying them outright. You're buying them like, I just want this wake word forever,
Right.
or I want this speech to intent context forever. So,
Sure. So the model then becomes the key.
That's right. So it's basically like it's literally like a file that you'll integrate into your project, and then because it has to be offline for this to make sense. Yeah.
Right. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So because API key, that's like that's the very current way of doing things. Is like, well, we've got to call somewhere, right? And we're definitely toying with the idea of moving forward, maybe calling just to say, hi, I'm a device. I just want to register myself. And then maybe we can offer a cheaper alternative for people who just want, hey, you know what? I have like 50 devices and for my like hobby project, and I don't need this enterprise level support. We'd like to offer something for them. So we're definitely working on ways to change the model to welcome them in. We want to make sure hobbyists can like really get at this stuff. But we always offer like time limited models, trials, and stuff like that for people to experiment.
I was just going to say, how does a hobbyist get into it? But it sounds like you got it covered.
So they can basically, they can basically use the trials to make use of it. And the models will just be time limited. They can refresh them every month if they want. So they're basically not useful for like commercial distribution, which is, I mean, that's the whole, obviously, the whole model is we want to support hobbyists. We want to get them to commercial level, but we need to make sure once they're at commercial level, then they're putting that model into possibly millions of devices. And that's when we need to change our model. Yeah.
So that's actually a good segue. I was curious, how do you train your model or define your model if you're not necessarily using information that's being fed into a cloud or some kind of an open learning process?
Well, it's basically trained offline. And anything more would be proprietary trade secret.
Sure.
It's all trained offline, and it uses just some modern machine learning techniques to basically point it in the right direction. So we don't do anything. We don't do any collection on like users' data in order to improve it. That's like something we said, no, that doesn't work with the whole philosophy. So we stayed away from that.
Are you training with multiple languages? So if you spoke French or if you spoke Chinese or something else, it could recognize those?
Right. So that's a good question. We actually we support 4 languages right now. We support English, German, Spanish, French. So, and then we have a few on the horizon. Language expansion is kind of slow because we kind of need to do a lot of upfront work to move into a new language. So we're plodding along. But yeah, we can actually, like, there's even situations where we were playing around with a demo where you could say hello in a whatever language, and it would actually point the engine to a speech to intent engine in that language. So like, I think our web demo right now on the Pico Voice website, you can say hello, and then it will basically change the whole thing over to English, and then you can start issuing commands in English. And I think it's that sort of thing that like I could see at like airports or like anywhere where there's lots of international flow. You want something that can just like context switch, basically.
Yeah, being able to switch on the fly, I can see that being a really huge advantage, especially like you say, if you're visiting another country and trying to find something, or even in just a multilingual household, that could be super helpful. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so we're definitely looking to expand our language roster. Just a ton of work.
I have some questions about just voice recognition in general. And I think the first comes to mind is what are in your opinion, some of the best use cases for implementing this? Like if I'm a developer listening to this podcast right now, I maintain an app, like what are some things in the app that you think could really benefit from voice recognition, speaker recognition, sort of regardless of how you choose to implement it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I personally, just as a user, seen so many instances of voice recognition being absolutely shoehorned into apps just because it's cool. And that's definitely, like, it is cool, and I'm glad people are using it. But I think a lot of use cases now, especially on mobile, are all about hands-free. So driving applications, running, we like kitchen, like if you have like a recipe book open and you want to control it while you're kneading dough, you don't want to get your tablet covered in flour. There's hands-free is a big one. Also, more and more it's coming up, like accessibility is really important. And there are a lot of people that interact with devices only through voice because it's much harder to do it another way. And we would love to be able to like have, like, every app has like an accessibility setting that it's like you can just do this whole app through voice. It's those sorts of things that are most appealing for me. I think the sort of showy, like, hey, you can say play this song, that's cool, but like
that actually just brought to mind a couple things. Like, I have a recipe app that I use on my iPad, like docked up, and you have to swipe to do the next one, and I always use like my knuckles to do it or something like that, right? Because I think Apple even makes a commercial about this as well. Right. It's such a pain.
Yeah, and if you could just say next page, like that would be handy.
So I'm wondering too, like your perspective on, is the state of like just how good voice recognition is improving? Because I think the other thing is, I think most of us have some bit of a love-hate relationship with these tech, right? I think it's basically a meme where you just get frustrated yelling at your thing. So I'm just curious your perspective. This is a very random question, but it's like, is it getting better? Are like people that work with you seeing like success with these? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think that's like definitely, because I've had those thoughts too. I'm like, how, like, because we're like 90% there, but that like 10% is like a real, it's that's where all the frustration comes from, because it's like, oh, it mixed up this one keyword in the sentence I was looking for, and it looks silly.
When I went freelance, I was still only a few years into my development career. My first contract, I was paid $60 an hour. Due to feedback from my friends, I raised it to $120 an hour on the next contract. And due to the podcasts I was involved in and the screencasts I had made in the past, I started getting calls from people I'd never even heard of who wanted me to do development work for them because I had done that kind of work or talked about or demonstrated that kind of work in the videos and podcasts that I was making. Within a year, I was able to more than double my freelancing rates, and I had more work than I could handle. If you're thinking about freelancing or have a profitable but not busy or fulfilling freelance practice, let me show you how to do it in my Dev Heroes Accelerator. Dev Heroes aren't just people who devs admire, they're also people who deliver for clients who know, like, and trust them. Let me help you double your income and fill your slowdowns. You can learn more at devheroesaccelerator.com.
And honestly, it would have implications on whether I'd want to use a tech like this in my app. Right. Because if I was like, there's some like slam dunk use cases where certainly I need voice. But if I'm building a recipe app and I'm on the fence about like, this is on my roadmap, like I don't want to put in a feature, like if it's going to benefit me, great. But if user is just going to get frustrated and yelling at their iPads because of this thing I put in, right? Like then that's actually counterproductive for me.
Totally. So, I mean, we're definitely improving our stuff. Everybody is improving, but it seems like it's like that last mile is just like, it's a slog. So the bar is being raised year after year. It's just a lot less noticeable than it used to be. But also, I think the way we approach these problems helps because, again, we're like not trying to understand the whole language. So that also means less error, because if you only have previous page and next page as like intents on your app, it's going to be pretty rare that it's going to false alarm with something that's like completely random. Well, it's actually impossible if those are the only two things. It's either going to do next or previous. Yep. So purpose built is definitely a way around that. And I think I think it's just people having used these like speech to text engines that understand the whole language and trying to like cram it into a device and then like parse the results and like okay, it contains page and next, so maybe it's doing it right. That whole model of thinking was flawed from the beginning. So I think just our approach is actually going to like be more welcoming for developers.
Yeah, because I have to imagine like some of the harder things are like your proper nouns or just like random words like that. There's just like sort of an infinite.
And English is particularly bad. When you work on speech recognition, you really understand how bad English is. It is like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't sound like it's spelled. It like the words are all just from all over the place. So it's like, yeah, it's almost like I'd rather really build one in Japanese. that language makes sense.
So, okay, actually, more on that point. So, I really like your answer of if you have a smaller subset of what you're looking for, it just makes the problem a lot easier.
Yeah.
So, if I'm looking for a word that's like something very specific, like something that wouldn't be in the English language per se, like some special like noun or command that's particular to my app, do I then have to like train? Like, how exactly do I train something to look for that like proper noun? Do I have to like go in somewhere and just like say it a bunch with a bunch of different people if it's something like made up or specific? How would that work?
No, again, we are like absolutely dev obsessed. So you type it in and we'll figure it out. And we'll, I believe the console has something where it'll show you the pronunciation. It's thinking.
Okay.
It is difficult. Some words require custom service. If it's like something that's just completely that we can't even guess how it's pronounced. Sometimes it needs a little human assisted nudge in the right direction. But in general, we can handle proper nouns. But it is definitely it's definitely a challenging problem because especially like, I mean, you think of like tech companies in the last 10 years, all their names, it's like they just omit like every vowel.
Yes.
And it's
exactly.
like,
yeah, I was just going to say exactly like startup company names are always going to be a sure challenge. It's like, is it a drug name or is it a startup name? I'm not sure. Right. One of those two.
And it's like Flyva. And it's like, what? Like,
your doctor recommended Flyva.
FLVW. And it's like, what?
Do not take Flyva if you are.
It sounds like honestly, you might be better off spelling or putting into like the machine learning model what it sounds like versus how it's actually spelled, right? Because that's what essentially the model is just trying to figure out the like pattern of noises to look for more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like something I feel like we're moving towards is like more focusing on sounds than words. Because the fact is spoken language written language is just like a guess at how spoken language is actually used. So spoken language is the truth. That's actually what we say. That's the way we communicate ideas. And then we translate them into like words. And it just so happens English has an awful translation. But that's like, we're trying to say sounds are more important. Like, yeah.
So one thing that I was curious about, and this is kind of not directly related to Pico voice in particular, but how do you handle like the real-time audio that your devices are inputting? Because I'm sure when you've got a large cloud backing service, it's not as much of an issue because you can offload some of that. But how do you handle it when you've got people's mobile devices that are the main drivers and the source?
Yeah. So that's definitely a challenge, and it's different for every platform, every framework. But essentially it just comes down to you just try and get access to the raw audio stream, and then we just split it up into frames. And this is very common in real-time voice processing to do frame-based processing. So basically we just grab a bunch of audio samples and we put it into the engine. The engine comes back with a value. And then that's all the engine knows is how to do frames. There's a lot more complex versions of this. I worked in a company several years ago called Malaspina Labs. There was another startup here in Vancouver. And we would do all sorts of what's called windowing, where you like combine frames so that there's sort of a overlap, and also look back, look ahead, where you're trying to like, okay, let's keep the last 2 seconds of audio in my memory so I can try and understand what's being said. I can understand the context.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of pretty complex things you can do, but real-time audio is all about like, you got to get it done in, I think, 33 milliseconds. Like whatever you do with one frame of audio has to return in 33 milliseconds. If it doesn't, you start building up lag and everything explodes. So it's very important when you're doing this sort of stuff, like optimization and focus on like efficiency, because you really can't, if you start building up frames, you start building up latency and lag. And then people start going, oh, this thing's not working. And then, suddenly it comes back 2 seconds later with some weird stuff because it was actually listening to something that was said before you started speaking. It's a mess. So yeah, I think it's just like, you have to have a real mind for efficiency. And that's actually one of the reasons we write everything, our engines, in native code in C, because C is lightning fast, because it's not dealing with any OS stuff. There's no application layer. It's literally, here's memory, here's where to move it, here's how to use it, done. And that's kind of that gives us a lot of control over how much memory we use, how we use it, and how fast things move along.
Well, so along that line, when it comes to web, how is that actually working? So I get my NPM module. I've got my model that I built on the console. Is there like a WASM component, a WebAssembly component here that is being used on the client? Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So we actually ported, I think last year, we made everything WASM for web. So we have, now I'm not the web guy, so I'm gonna have to take a guess at how this works. But it's basically centered around WASM. And we have another NPM module called Web Voice Processor that basically is a real-time audio recorder for your browser. So it will handle getting audio from your browser, and I think it uses the web audio.
Web
API.
audio,
yeah. So it uses that. It does all the conversion and formatting, and then basically will feed it into these workers to get responses from the engine. But yeah, we actually went WebAssembly pretty early on when doing the web stuff, because it just seemed like it was like the future. It's like,
right. Otherwise, you're going to actually have the thing that runs your model in JavaScript or TypeScript, whatever.
Exactly.
But, and you're not going to get your 33 milliseconds out of that.
No,
probably
to
not.
See.
Maybe.
You're a JavaScript genius.
Well, and also, I mean, it really depends on the device at that point, where WASM is going to be a lot more kind of, essentially, to the extent that it can be, closer to the bare metal, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, it's trying to get as close to the bare metal as possible without breaking the framework. So yeah, WASM's pretty amazing, I gotta say. Like, and it's allowed us to make something that can be basically used all across the web framework. So it's just not React. It's like Angular and Vue and all that stuff. Node, like anything that's like got like a layer above it that uses browser technology is like, yeah, go WASM.
So have you created any cool little demo projects, or have you seen anybody making really cool implementations with this?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, we've seen lots of fun stuff. I know myself, I created VR. So we also have a Unity SDK.
Cool.
So I decided to, as one of the things we like to do every once in a while is create like a demo with our stuff, because it puts us in the user's seat and it allows us to use our SDKs as users and be like, find the frustrations.
Yeah.
But then it allows us to create something that people can use and share and stuff. So I created a hands-free video player for VR. So it was basically something, it was like you're sitting in a theater with the screen just kind of floating there in 3D space. And you could basically control the video with like play, stop, seek forward 30 seconds, go to the halfway point, like all this all the sort of general stuff you'd want hands-free, because everyone knows VR controllers are still work in progress, and they've gotten really good lately, but point and clicking in VR is just like awful. So so that was kind of a way around that. We also saw there was a video that was going around that was actually somebody who created a voice activated wheelchair with our technology.
Mm-hmm.
It was something where they actually put it in the electronics of this wheelchair, and they could actually, because the person couldn't use their hands, so they actually started to say where they wanted to go, and it showed the video had them like driving around and controlling this wheelchair. It was like pretty amazing.
Do you have some ability to recognize an individual's voice built in? Because like just thinking, because the wheelchair example, I'd be concerned that somebody would randomly say like in another conversation, right? And then somebody's wheelchair just starts going.
takes off.
Drive off cliff? Is that what you said? No.
Yeah. So I have to imagine there's some ability to do that, or at least that implementation did.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, our products are very much just like, we understand voice. We don't care whose it is. There are some upcoming products that we're looking forward to releasing that are going to address stuff like that, more like general, because like we kind of have like the 3 levels of voice recognition done. We've got the like wake word, speech to intent, speech to text. That's like covers pretty much all the like word recognition. But then there's like the more general stuff like speaker ID. What's another one? Like just voice activity. Like, can I know when there's voice in the room when somebody's speaking? Because it's a lot of smaller devices, or like stuff that just wants to know when to wake up and be smart. It's like useful to just like, can I hear a voice around me?
Yeah.
Should I start thinking? And that's a very good like thing to have, because then it's just like, it's not listening for a wake word or anything. It's just like more context aware. Like, are people in the room talking? Should I turn on my wake word engine even and like start listening? So there's general products are coming up, and we're excited to have those, because we're kind of looking forward to like trying to be like a build your own speech solution. Like, we give you the blocks, go for it, because like everybody has a different use case. It's not always just like wake word command. That's like the traditional, but like there's so many things. Like, I know we had a client who was like trying to have something where they're like working in warehouses, and they're always trying to talk to all of them had these like tablet devices that kind of ran their work, and their hands are always busy. So they wanted to like continually be able to talk to this thing. And so it was kind of an interesting thing, because it just needed to know it didn't need to be woken up or anything. It was just like, I always want to be listening and like processing these orders. So, and we had to do some custom work for them, but like, we just want people to be able to build their own, because we just want to empower people to like build what works for them.
That is awesome. That's very, very cool. So Ian, is there anything else that we haven't touched on yet that you think is worth talking about in regards to Pico Voice or any of this kind of voice recognition?
No, I think we covered a lot of good ground here.
I would say so. Do you guys have any additional questions that have come up?
Yeah, actually, can I throw in an IoT question? Just totally out of the park. Cool. All right. So Ian, every Christmas I get up holiday lights, and I do it all with Arduino and IoT stuff. Is that an option here? Can I make my Christmas lights voice activated and give them voice patterns?
Definitely. Yeah, we just released a support for Arduino Nano, actually. Nano 3.
Fantastic.
When you started that sentence, I thought you were just about to say, like, we just released a service for Christmas lights or something. That's where you're going there.
That's a value add.
Speech recognition Santa.
Yeah.
Come on, Santa.
All right.
No, yeah, we got you.
Very cool.
Yeah,
this is going to happen this year.
Awesome. Looking forward to the videos.
Yes. Well, cool. So before we move into picks, if people want to get in touch with you, learn more, talk to you about this, how can they find you? How can they reach you?
So I'd say just check out Pico Voice, at AI Pico Voice on Twitter. We also have our website, picovoice.ai. I'm on Medium. I write lots of articles on Medium. At what is my username on Medium? Oh, my name's Ian Lavery. Just search for that. Yeah. So those are where we can have a chat about speech recognition.
Cool. We will link to all of those in the show notes in case anybody does want to start up a conversation.
Hey, folks, if you love this podcast and would like to support the show, or if you wish you could listen without the sponsorship messages, then you're in luck. We're setting up new premium podcast feeds where you can get all of the episodes released after Christmas 2020 without the ads. Signing up will help us pay for editing and production, and you can go sign up at devchat.tv/premium.
But I think it's time to move into picks. So, Jack, would you like to start us off this week?
Sure, I'd love to. So my pick for this week is Mythic Quest on Apple TV. It's got 2 seasons out, and it's about a game company and game development, and it's hilarious, but also kind of deeply insightful at times into development and all of the kind of vagaries around that. So just a great, fun watch. My wife and I binged it and really, really enjoyed it. So if you got Apple TV, definitely worth checking out.
That is a great one. I've watched that and have very much enjoyed it. And I think that Ubisoft is one of the co-creators of the show, or if they're not a creator, they have some stake in it. And it's really great when they'll do these animations for it because they're so well done. And I wonder, like, who is it within the company that gets to work on these? Because they must be just a blast to do.
Yeah, they even had some Diablo in there, which is cuts really deep for my wife and I. We're spent way too much time on Diablo, so it's kind of fun to see that called out every once in a while.
Nice.
My only problem with shows like that, just I remember watching Silicon Valley back in the day, is sometimes it like hit a little too close to home. Like I don't know if I got to explain it, but like sometimes it's just like, I don't know, like it felt a little bit too much like reality that like I don't know.
They had an episode that focused on the gender disparity in engineering, and it was a tough watch because it was comedy, but it also cut really close to home and addressed a really fundamental issue in our space. I mean, my daughter's in CS class now, and she's one of 7 women out of 90 students, and that's not a great ratio for us going forward.
No,
it's not. But kudos to her for being in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and kudos to the show for tackling it because it's better to address it than to just let it slide under the radar. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. TJ, what do you have for us today?
I'm gonna pick a service called Hoopla, Hoopla. It's a service that essentially partners with local libraries. I think it's US only. I'm not sure if it extends internationally at all, but essentially you sign in with your local library. So it'll ask you for which library you're a member of. It'll ask you for your card number and such. But then it just gives you access to essentially borrow things digitally. So you can get digital books. I've been using it for audiobooks, and it's through your library. It's through library partnerships. So it's completely free. So I've been rereading the Harry Potter books, and I'm getting into the later, longer books. And so I picked up the audiobooks so that I'm listening to it in the car and such. And it's kind of nice because it's just I've been using the app on my phone. Once I'm signed in with my library, you get like so many titles that you can do per month completely for free. So it is interesting. So if you're in the US, if you have a local library, and if not, maybe check out your local library. That could be a pick as well. It's a fun service for that.
Very nice. Very cool. Ian, do you have something you'd like to recommend?
Sure. So just this last weekend, I saw probably the craziest movie that I've ever seen. A movie called Mandy. I'm speechless with that movie. It is pure insanity, but it is a must watch for any horror fan and any just insane, like, I mean, I'm speechless.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage's most recent work has been just absolutely bonkers. He just really goes all out in this one. That's all I can say. He is a pure madman. They just let him loose. They put the tiger shirt on him and just let him make his own axe and go get revenge. So I just think it's like it was also like breathtaking visually. Like it looked like every frame of it was like hand painted to look like a horror comic book or something.
And the music in it too. Johan Johansson unfortunately passed away, I think, before the movie was released. He did it all with like analog synthesizers and stuff. So it's very just like dark, grimy synthesizers and stuff. Amazing soundtrack. So yeah, go check out Mandy, but be prepared for a ride.
I don't think anybody's prepared for Nick Cage lately.
No.
Fair warning, though. So my pick for this week is completely different from everybody else's. Lately, and this is partially for my new job, which is working with an IoT company, and then partially because I want to get into it and understand more of what the IoT engineers are doing, is starting to build little IoT projects with Raspberry Pis and sensors and Python and things like that. So a really cool company that I've come across that is making a lot of the sensors that connect well and require less soldering, less breadboards, less things that are very, very foreign to me as a newbie, is a company called DigiKey. And if you've not heard of them before, they are just a electronic component company. And it seems like they have 1,000,001 sensors of all different kinds and makes and models and things that they do. But they're pretty inexpensive, I think, for the most part, until you get into like the more complicated ones. But they just have everything under the sun that you might want to take in. Like the one that I got most recently was a temperature sensor that does humidity and temperature and pressure and, all these different things. And it's very cool. So if you're, starting to get into the little bit of the hardware and taking in environmental things and then wanting to put them online, which is kind of what we're doing, it's a good place to check out, because I bet you that they will have whatever it is that you need if you do a little bit of digging. So DigiKey Electronics is the name of the company, and I would definitely recommend you check them out if you're getting into the hardware side of things at all. That's going to be my pick for this week.
Awesome.
Well, Ian, thank you again for coming on. It's been really fun to talk to you and hear about how you're moving the world forward in terms of everything language related, which is going to be, I think, a benefit for everyone involved. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we will see everybody on the next episode of React Roundup.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.